we're going to move on now to our Teams experts. So we're lucky enough to be joined today by Fay Briscoe, who's from Avvio Reply. She's the Senior Account Director, and we've got David Callaghan from WM Reply, and he's the Business Unit Manager and ACM Lead. Thank you so much, Fay and David, for joining us. I'm sure you've been following the chat the whole way, but there's been lots of questions about culture, psychological safety, those sorts of things. I'm guessing this is something that, this isn't the first time you've had these sorts of questions. What are some of your tips? I mean, we've had some fabulous examples from Denny and Sarah, but what are some of your tips for being able to create that safe place where you can work and then start to get productive work from teams?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think, I think the first thing that we all need to give ourselves a break over is the fact that COVID happened overnight, and there was a mad rush to find the right digital tools that we could get out to the business super quickly to just allow us to be able to function. Obviously, now that we have moved into this rhythm of this new hybrid world of work and Teams is here to stay, I think it is absolutely super important to take a stop and review where we are with Teams and actually where our company culture is sitting, and especially looking at that psychological safety. And the first thing that I think you would need to do is really spend some time understanding the needs of your employees, utilising both the really rich analytics that you can get from platforms like the SWOOP platform, speaking to your employees and understanding actually where those pain points, barriers, mindsets and behaviours are, and then start to formulate an employee experience to improve that. Because actually the last thing that we want on Teams is for it to be the new email. And I'm sure you'll remember, 12 months ago, it was like, email was this we all hated it, didn't we? It was like constant, and that actually we don't want that to happen with Teams. And I think what's really interesting that's come out of this SWOOP report is actually the fact that Teams is really being used for those chats, those video calls, those meetings. So it's kind of doing the next stage function of email, but what it's not doing, or what organisations and companies aren't doing at the moment, is really understanding the opportunity around Teams to really deliver that hybrid model of work and a successful employee experience. And I think the way that you can look to do that, so as I said before, is really look at those employee needs, be really clear on your channel strategy as well. So understand, you need to understand what is the purpose and the point of Teams. If you've got Yammer or Workplace in place, when and where do you use that? Email, Microsoft Planner, the whole Office 365 suite. Understand the role of those, and then actually be really, really clear to your employees of when to be using those, so to communicate the purpose to them as well. And then finally, I think the thing that I would talk around is that, I don't think that everyone has a really great understanding of the volume of functionality that's available on Teams to actually make it a really valuable tool for employees. And actually within my organisation, absolutely, okay, I'll put my hands up and say I am naughty. I do spend a lot of time in chat, and actually, what's been great about this webinar is it's really educated me more to make sure that those conversations do happen in channels. But actually, we use it for holiday planners. We use it to benchmark important bits of content and information. We use it to manage our finances. So actually, for me, it is a super valuable tool. And then what we then do is that when we then understand what functionality is working for us, we then spread that throughout our company or our organisation so that everyone else can start using it and we can start modelling those behaviours. Oh, Sharon,
Sharon, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. In the report, I think it's page 66 when you have a look. We've actually got 5 tips. So we spoke to your colleagues and other partners around the world, and we have 5 tips for implementing Teams, or things you should definitely avoid when you are rolling out Teams. And Fay, it's interesting. One of those was actually don't get rid of the functions. Like Teams is such a hub when it is used properly, and all these different apps, like you mentioned Planner before, Yammer and everything, allow people access to these things. Yes, it can be overwhelming to start with, but if they can't access them, they'll probably go outside of Teams or even outside of the Microsoft 365 suite, bring other tools, and it just becomes quite chaotic. Is that advice that you guys would follow, David, as well?
I think it's an interesting point, because absolutely the biggest question that we get when it comes to Teams, when it comes to adoption, it's what tool when. We're giving people a plethora of platforms, and some of them do the same thing, right? Planner is very similar to a project, which is similar to something else. So it all starts by taking a step back and thinking about how people work. How are our people working? Can we really actually answer the question truly that we know how people in the organization work, what their pain points are, what are the opportunities for them in using Teams? So we need to do that discovery. We need to really understand what it is and how the tools can start to help us. And then, as Fay was just saying, that allows us to start to think about, right, these tools, these wonderful tools, how can they start to help our people? What is Teams going to be used for? How are we going to position that? What is Yammer's purpose going to be? And that starts to really help us understand, helping people. Thinking back to last year, we were working with an organization, a global company, over 100,000 seats. And for them, they were still using Skype. But they got to over 50% adoption of Teams across the globe in just collaboration only mode, which goes against the grain a little bit about what we've been talking about. But it just shows that it's possible that positioning Teams as that collaboration hub, yes, chatting to people, talking out loud, working in groups, working on documents together, is a really fundamental thing. And then all the meeting stuff, it just really helps it. And yeah, we need to turn off those old tools. We need to stop that bad way of working. We need to remove some things maybe in the process, which I think is, part of the report and part of the recommendations. We need to turn off all these tools, because if we're giving people, I don't know, Zoom and Teams and Skype still hanging around, and maybe they're joining a Slack channel because that's a client they're working with or something like that, it all becomes a bit manic, chaotic. And so, yeah, it's been spoken about as well. We default to that psychological safety, which is, okay, I need to talk to just Fay and Sharon. I'm going to send them a chat message, because I then am reassured that it's only them that are going to see that message. And that goes back to email culture, which, Fay also mentioned. It's about stepping away from that and actually starting to work out loud. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's been mentioned in the chat. It's been mentioned by several people already. It's culture. And that's how we start to really change things. So yeah, move off Skype if you haven't already. Time's running out. But then start to think about the next phase of that. So move to Teams, start to adopt it in its grassroots, and then start to challenge people in how they're working, which then starts to deliver that big word that we all love, which is digital transformation, because it's all about wider work, the modern workplace, and how we start to deliver those results.
Can I just, David, there was a question from Simon that was about, and maybe it's both, actually it's probably a combination of Fay and David and Laurie to answer this. Simon was asking whether there was anything in the benchmarking report about senior leaders and the role modeling. Do we need role modeling? So I guess there's something to Laurie about, is that in the report, but there's also something to Fay and David. What do we do when we have these managers that keep on sending emails? And how do we, I'm not sure who wants to have a first go. I should just ask Simon, did I get the question sort of roughly right? You're welcome to unmute. But I hope you got the question right.
He's given us a thumbs up.
Yeah,
okay.
It's interesting that what we often say is that in Yammer, it's important for the senior leaders to lead the way. On Teams, it's not necessarily the case. In fact, what we found is that the people leading the way were often not the management team. We had one example, Real Foundations, where the top strategy team was a strong team, but all the others were operational level. And I think that's where the inspiration comes from, and that's what we've heard from our subject matter leaders as well. That model your work on people doing work now. If the management leaders are bad, they're not going to get better all of a sudden overnight. We found that the best practices were people worked it out. People worked it out themselves, and in fact, that's why they were hidden, because they were just getting on and doing their work. So for teams, I think the role model are people actually on the job doing the job today, not so much the leaders. So don't look there. So you won't find anything.
And I think,
can you tap? I was going to say, can you tap into that with champions?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where I was about to lead is, I think, team champions are absolutely as crucial as any ambassadors, advocates and champions that you have within your business. And I think as Lawrence was saying, a lot of the time, the people who are advocates for teams are frontline, grassroots, the employees that sit below those, the employees that sit below line managers. So what we need to be doing is creating that Teams Champions network and facilitating them to amplify best practice, good behaviours, information and knowledge sharing. And we need to ensure that we're keeping that community ongoing as well, because I think, as we said, Teams is here to stay. So therefore, a community of Teams champions is absolutely crucial in driving this forward as a successful tool.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, Simon and I can spend an hour talking about this topic. I quite regularly do when I'm working with kind of organizations. It's, ProSci, if you've not heard of them, they do a benchmarking report every 2 years on change management and adoption. Their biggest thing is, active and visible senior sponsorship and leadership is what delivers change. If you do not have change, then you're not going to deliver your results, because it's all about how people get managed through that process, which sounds horrible, but is a necessity. But it's not just about our champions and our leaders. It's about our influencers. Who are those people across the organization that can start to actually deliver results by influencing others? The way that we get execs, people that have insane calendars and diaries to actually start to use Teams, is we don't necessarily go to them first. We go to their PA, we go to their support team, and we work with them. We just show them Teams, we work out the art of the possible, and then we coach those senior leaders in much smaller, broken down sessions, showing them how it works for them. And it's a very open conversation. They've got 100 things on their plate. How does Teams start to support them? And that's where they become more active and visible. Because if senior leaders are sending out an email or issuing work or communicating with their teams, then how can we expect our people to start to use Teams to actually make that happen? So therefore, you get your grassroots with your champions, you've got your senior leaders coming in from the top, and that's where we meet people in the middle, and that's where change starts to flourish across the organization.
Well, I hope that's where SWOOP can come into play. Laurie, do you want to screen share the QR code if anyone does want to set up a trial? Because David and Fay, that's where, we can show you immediately who are those influencers, who are those champions, so you can use them across your network to try to really boost that collaboration, that engagement really quickly. Laurie's just going to actually...